you have to, as a business owner, just educate yourself of what does your organization need at these different levels, and then be willing to take the risk to take that step up.
Everybody, and welcome to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider. You'll have to excuse the voice today. I was hanging out with Jessica yesterday at dinner. I had to actually escape from dinner a little early to go play in what is like my competitive, we were laughing. It's like, Scott, you don't work out a lot. My one workout is playing competitive men's league soccer. So I have a little bit of a raspy voice from screaming for 2 games straight. We ended up winning in overtime in the semifinals. And then losing 11-9, which is a high score for soccer.
But it was indoor, you told me.
Yeah, indoor arena soccer, losing 11-9 in the championship. So we have everybody always asks like, what's going on with all the stuff in here, right?
Oh yeah, I didn't know.
Soccer.
Soccer.
For some of the listeners that know me well, soccer has always been a big thing in my life. I think I've probably been playing like 32 years or something like that, right? Yeah. So like I started playing as a little kid. So anyways, I have a little bit of a raspy voice from screaming at the guys all night, but nonetheless, I have my friend Jessica with me today, flew in, I guess, from Colorado?
Colorado,
right. And then, but going back to Dallas.
Complicated life, which we'll get into.
Yeah, which we'll get into. And some of you might know her actually like, I was like trying to think of a cool bio, and you're actually a pretty amazing person. You got like a lot of cool stuff going on. So as a fellow, even younger, I don't know how you feel anymore, right? I'm always like younger entrepreneur. Yeah. We got a lot of stuff. So a lot of you that are certified exit planning advisors might remember her from our exit planning summit. She's also a fellow certified exit planning advisor herself, but more specifically, she spoke at our first ever Women in Exit Planning symposium last year. She's joining us in 2024 at the Exit Planning Summit as a power session speaker, which is going to be pretty badass. I'm pretty happy about that. Another star-studded lineup, if you will. We had a really good lineup this year. Mm-hmm. We really had to, we always kind of one up. So I think, Jessica's certainly a part of that. But she is, I would say, an entrepreneur. She's an exited owner. She's an author. I have her book here. Author, speaker. She owns 3 offices at Transworld Business Advisors, and then most recently launched a company called Exit Factor. So busy lady. So welcome to the show, and thanks for taking a couple of days out of your week to come over here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great to hang out with you and the team and see the offices.
Yeah, isn't it cool? Yeah, everybody's always like, I wonder what goes on over at EPI in Little Westlake, Ohio, right? Yeah. So I want to start, I guess, just get right into it and start by going all the way back. I think it was 2009 when you started your first company. 2009.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything that we're doing today, which I can appreciate, right? Because I was in landscaping, and then I put on the suit and tie when I was in professional education. A little intimidating at first, but you were in wine.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that.
So I call that like my early life crisis. So I did the suit and tie thing in corporate for a few years before that. So I started in sports. I worked for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Philadelphia Flyers, and then moved into commercial real estate development. And then 2008, 2009 happened. So
right,
yeah,
not a bad, I mean, not a great place to be, I guess.
I know. Time. I mean, like that millennial generation came out into that. At least I got a few years working under my belt before.
Yeah.
But so 2009, working for a commercial real estate developer. We were funded by Lehman Brothers.
Right.
My husband and I both worked for the company, and when it failed, there was this kind of like epiphany that we both went through, and we said, I had been raised, and we can talk more about my backstory, but I had been raised that if you get a good job and you work for a good, stable company, like you'll be fine, right? They'll take care of you. It's safe and secure.
And that's what your parents kind of instilled in you? Because your grandparents, you said, were the entrepreneurs.
My grandparents were the entrepreneurs, but my grandfather ended up not planning for the exit of his business, and it failed later in life. So my dad grew up in this environment where he perceived entrepreneurship to be super risky, right?
Yeah, right. If he saw it firsthand from his own dad.
Yeah. So he instilled in me, get a good job with a good, stable company, save your 401k, and you'll be taken care of. But in 2009, in that moment, what we realized is this guy up in, we'll call it an ivory tower in Manhattan, had no idea who I was, had no idea who my husband was, and was just like, we have saved so much money, and we're just going to cross names off lists.
That doesn't even seem like you today. Like, I guess we haven't known each other for all that long, but like you're wildly entrepreneurial.
I know.
So
it's crazy,
like
right?
you ever just like waiting to kind of bust out of the shell.
Yeah, which is, I mean, I did like my corporate career, and because I'm a doer, I'm a type A, I get stuff done, right? But I did struggle with not having the creativity to really spread my wings in the corporate environment. And when I look back at the challenges that I had with management or my role, it was that the entrepreneur's why question. Like, why do we do it this way? Why can't we do it that way, right?
Always challenging the status quo, which I mean, I've never worked. I had one job my entire life. It was a janitor at an all-boys high school. Yeah. And so I threw the lawnmower in the back of the car, and not truck, car, and started my first company. But I couldn't imagine. Do you think you could go back and work in corporate now that you've been doing what you've been doing?
No, I'm totally not hireable. Just not, like, no one's gonna hire me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm like, man, if this EPI thing doesn't work out, like, I have to go start another business because I don't know if I could go work I'm not hireable. I'm going to your point, like challenging status quo. They're gonna be like, dude, can you just get with it here?
I know, but now it's funny. Now we're talking about. I think back with the Flyers, like there was some areas that now I can recognize. So we were talking breakfast. Like my job was to bring social media and digital advertising into the fold. This is like 2005 when social media was
which is like a big deal.
Big deal. So that was creative. It was new. I always got myself into projects. Like we did, we were in Phoenix a couple months ago, actually. Yeah. And one of my jobs is I did this charity event for the Flyers players at that resort that we were at, right?
Oh, cool.
Like I get myself into all these weird projects. Like my role was sales support and social media, and then I'd be running a golf tournament, right? Or we'd have like this alumni thing down the Jersey Shore, right? Yeah. So now like thinking back at it, like I couldn't just focus on my job. I'd always have 3 other things on my plate I was working on.
Okay. So how'd you get into the wine though? So you do all that, and then you're like, let's start this wine. What kind of business was it?
So it was we started as a retail store. So as we're getting laid off, my husband and I were living in Aspen, Colorado at the time.
Right.
We used to go to this wine store and hang out and drink because like, what are we going to do?
Right, exactly.
And so our friends own this boutique wine retail store, and we're sitting there drinking one day, and we're like, well, maybe we'll just start this. And so we're like, hey, JP, do you mind if we just basically steal your idea and open it in another market? And he's like, go for it. So
did he help you with it?
He did. He helped with the initial, the big thing about the wine industry is like you can't sell Yellowtail and be competitive against Total Wine, right?
Yeah, sure.
You've got to find boutique brands, and you have to be able to offer something different.
Right.
So he was critical in that education for us. It's like this is how the distributors work, and you need to find boutique distributors and find boutique products, and that's where you're going to find your niche. So we took that concept and moved to Naples, Florida, because I was done with the winters in Aspen.
Okay.
And put about 2 weeks of thought into it.
And did it.
And
you actually had a storefront, like I can come and hang out in there.
Yeah. So we started as a storefront. We had retail, and we had a wine bar, so you could come in and you could taste the product and figure out what you liked. And that was kind of our thing. And then the opportunity we had was the wine industry was totally crippled at that time because a lot of the retail storefront owners didn't have money to invest in inventory, right?
Right.
So wine is, when you get into luxury wine, it's really allocated, kind of like you like art, right?
Yeah,
so
I like art.
Yeah, art is similar to art. There's not a lot to go around. So like, when you're buying a piece of art, you might get 1 of 50.
Yes.
Luxury wine's the same thing.
Same thing.
You might get 1 of 50 cases. So a product that we would have never had the opportunity to get as young new owners was now available in the market. So we got pulled into this luxury market where we're working with collectors that spend between $500 to $25,000 on a single bottle of wine.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it's crazy. So we still the retail storefront, but we went into this whole collector space where we were dealing luxury wine for collectors all over the U.S., Canada, Hong Kong. So yeah.
So then what happened with that company? Did you sell it?
We did sell it. We had retail storefront, and then, like I just said, we were working with collectors on 2 continents.
Yep.
And we didn't have EPI at the time. So
yeah, right.
The business was completely dependent on myself and my husband.
Sure.
We had a couple employees, but I mean, we were working crazy hours.
Yeah.
So it just like hit burnout, and it was like hitting a wall.
Yeah.
And we were back in Colorado skiing one weekend, and I woke up and I said, I'm not going home. Like, I'm just not going back to that life. And my husband agreed, and we went home, and about as much time as we put into starting the business. We put into selling it.
Yeah, starting selling it, right.
Yeah, so we listed it for sale that week. And
by yourselves? Interesting question, right? Because now you're in the trans world, world, the M&A world. So you listed it by yourself, or you have a broker?
No, we had a broker. We had a broker, not a trans role broker. I won't name the broker.
Okay.
But we listed it with a broker. He did do his job in finding us a buyer. We were under contract within 30 days, so everything happened really fast.
So you had a pretty good business, though.
We had a pretty good business. Yeah. We were doing about, I think, 4.5 at the time of sale, and because in that luxury market, the margins are way higher, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you don't make any money on Yellowtail, and if you do, it's like 50 cents, right?
Yeah, right.
But when you get into a bottle of wine that's
20 grand,
yeah,
you're making some money.
Yeah. So it was an attractive business. It was dependent on us, but it was attractive.
Did they keep the storefront? Like, can you still go visit it today, or have you not been around?
Yeah, so it's part of my learning lessons.
Yes.
And when I work with clients now, I always talk about thinking about what your most important outcome for your sale was. And at that time, and I'm still okay with this, but at that time, our most important outcome was money, right?
Okay.
We sold the company when we were 29. I needed money to start the next thing. It's not like this is my legacy play, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So we sold it to a buyer who had no experience in wine, which is fine. We learned the wine business too, but no experience in any business. She was a physician, and she was going to hire somebody non-local. Actually, I think they were from Cleveland or Chicago. They're somewhere from up here. Non-local that was going to come and run the store remotely, basically.
Ooh.
And this is 2012. Like remote's not a thing, right?
Remote's it's not cool yet. Yeah.
So we kind of knew that it wasn't going to last very long. So they got in and they kept the retail storefront.
Okay.
They immediately shut down the collector division.
Wasn't that the most profitable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But
maybe because they didn't know it as well as you?
It's complicated to run. Yeah, it's complicated to run.
Maybe.
And that was the part that was wearing, right? We had to deal with collectors all around the world. You have to sell that wine. You have to like fly in and interview with these winemakers and things. It's not like you just like order it online and say, "Hey, I'm going to sell you wine."
Yeah, right.
So it was the more time intensive part of the business. So they did last as a retail storefront for about 7 years after we sold, and
it
was a good run, and they ended up closing after that. So
man, did you stay in touch at all or not really?
No, we got most of our 90% of our cash up front.
Okay.
Did a 10% seller note on the back end, stayed on consulting for a year. And then at that point, the buyers, they really didn't want us around.
Yeah,
like they had their own vision of where it was going.
Of course.
And they felt like they were fine.
So you go from that, and then do you get into this virtual assistant thing? Is that where you go next?
No, I go to Transworld next, actually.
Transworld right after that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before we get to the whole M&A stuff, which I'm sure our audience, was probably the most interested about.
Right.
I'm most interested in this entrepreneurial run that leads up to this really cool Transworld run that you've done now for 10 years, right? So that was 2013 Transworld?
Yep, 13.
So what's a virtual assistant? Because I think that was, what year was that started?
So that one, we bought that company in 2000.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we bought the company in 2015.
I think this is before virtual assistants were cool too.
Yes. So
right. So like, is that, you still have that? Well, your sister has that business.
Yep.
So is it like booming? Like
yeah. Well, and it didn't start as a virtual assistant company. So I'm a great entrepreneur. I'm a great mom. I'm not a great homemaker. When I was growing up, my sisters, they'll appreciate this. I don't talk about this a lot, but they called me Messy Jessie, right?
Okay.
It's just like a mess everywhere. Okay. And so in 2015, and we'll get to the transworld stuff, but like I had growing business and everything was going on. And so I posted, I just remembered this is how the story started because it came up in my feed. But I posted on Facebook, I need somebody to come in and clean up after me and do my laundry. Does someone like that exist?
Help me. Yeah.
Help me.
Yeah.
And so we found this company that did personal assistance, and they would come in and they would basically be your mom. Right.
Exactly.
And
I'm totally with it.
So when we were about 6 months into that relationship as a client, the owner came to me and she's like, I think I'm done. I'm going to retire. And I was like, no, you can't. Like, I can't lose my assistant.
Right.
This is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Right.
So we ended up buying the company from her. And
total entrepreneur. We'll just buy it. Don't leave.
Buy it. It was a really small company. My sister was transitioning out of social media management for med spas and surgeons at that time. So she was looking for something to do.
Yeah.
And so we're like, all right, we'll just do this together. Started just in personal assistance, going into homes and being someone's mom.
Yep.
And then as virtual became a thing, added on virtual services. And so now the company's called Mod Assistance, and her main area of business is virtual assistants. But they still have, I still to this day have my personal assistant that still comes in every day.
Is through Mod?
It's through Mod. Yeah. She was just texting me before we jump on, but she's at the house today running my errands, managing the contractors.
Well, it's got to be, that's kind of a cool little segue too, is that one of the most, I always find it actually quite difficult. So you're starting all these companies, you're running all these companies, and like your Trans World and Exit Factor stuff is no joke. Like you over the last 10, right? It's been 10 years now.
Yeah.
Like you were the #1 Trans World office 5 years in a row.
Yeah,
something
we're
like
actually.
that?
I think
maybe it's even more.
Yeah,
now?
it's 7. It'll be 8.
But that doesn't come by luck, right? That's come by the intentional, deliberate, by design. But now you're a mom too. You're a business owner. Like it's gotta.
It's a lot.
It's messy at the house. Jesse's alive and well.
Yeah.
But maybe not anymore with the personal Mod assistant, right?
You just have to. I talk to people about this a lot. Is like you just can't do it on your own, And it's not just at work. It's that you need help at home if you're going to do both.
Yeah.
So that was the formation of the virtual assistant company. So I transitioned that company to my sister owns it fully now in 2021, and she's.
I would say it's got to be a great business now because that's like the thing now is virtual assistants.
And she still works with us. So one of her main support groups is she supports business brokers. So she supports all of our offices.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. We'll just bring in a Trans World. You can help everybody here.
Exactly.
So let's get to Trans World. So it sounds like you had a pretty good deal in the wine thing. So you go from wine into the M&A space.
Yeah.
And what kind of experience other than your own did you, like your own as an owner, have in that space? Did you have very little for that matter?
Very little, but both my husband Al and I had poor exit experiences from a family perspective.
Okay.
So jumping back to my grandfather was a very successful entrepreneur in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Yep. He owned a chain of pharmacies, but like those cool pharmacies that used to have the soda pop fountains and things like that. And he didn't see in the 90s when the transition was coming to the business model like CVS, Eckerd's, Rite Aid.
Right.
And so he had opportunities to exit, but he had a really hard time letting go and held on too long. And because of that, he sold for like pennies.
Of what he could have,
And left our family in a poor financial position. And really also, he didn't make it that much longer. He died fairly young.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
And why do you think that is? Is it because it's hardship after post-sale?
I think a lot of business owners struggle with what the day after is going to be.
Right, exactly.
And what that looks like. And, he had a heart disease.
Yeah.
He didn't take great care of himself as most entrepreneurs don't. But he did have heart disease. And sometimes I wonder, like, no pun intended, did he die of like a broken heart or whatever?
Seriously though.
I was 12, so I didn't get to have that conversation with him.
It would be interesting to have it now, especially in your space, right?
I know.
And especially with your summit speech about the day after.
Yeah. So that was my story. And then my husband's story, his family, all entrepreneurs, his parents, grandparents, like
it's a long line.
Yeah. And they came from the fish business. So they were the middleman between the fishermen's on the Jersey Shore and the restaurants where you would have your dinner, right?
What another interesting business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We call it the fish factory.
Yeah.
But so the plan, or Al's dad's plan, was that Al was going to take over the business. Once he was done college.
With cool, yeah.
And so he came home 6 months afterwards, and he's like, all right. His dad's like, all right, it's time for you to take over. And I was like, wait, what? Like, no, I'm not taking over.
Like, I don't want to do the fish factory
I don't want to do the fish factory thing.
Okay.
And because they didn't have really a good plan for that, they ended up just closing up that business, at least one location of it.
So his dad, Al, was his successor.
Yeah.
You see that a lot in family businesses, though. It's like we always talk about that forced intergenerational kind of transition.
Yeah.
Is that if you don't have those questions early and often. So like me and my dad and the listeners have certainly heard us talk about this before. There's a Tom Deans who wrote a book, Every Family's Business. In the back of that book, for as long as that book has been out, I guess, my dad has introduced me to that book. In the back, there's the Family Business Blueprint. Mm-hmm. And it's just it's like 12 questions or 20 questions that you just sit down. Me and Dad used to do it more formal. And now that we're maybe a little bit more together, right, and I'm a little bit older, we do it like over a beer.
Yeah.
And we'll just literally sit. We have these, we call them Chris's kitchen counter. So he has one of those islands, nice big kitchen. And that's where we have our partners meetings too. The last Thursday of each month, we get together for a few hours and get caught up. But yeah. So anyways, yeah, we just, we use that family business guide, if you will, that family business blueprint to ask those questions. Like, Scott, do you want this? Do you actually want this business? Because there's a lot of people that are not like Al who go away and then come back. Or they go, I'm working in the business, Dad, but I don't ever want to be the owner of that.
Right.
That was Tom's. I think his dad owned like a manufacturing company. And he said, no, Dad, we should sell that, take the wealth from that, and then go buy another business that I'm more passionate about. So rather than thinking about this family as an operating entity, think about the family as like a wealth generation engine. So we'll just keep rolling the wealth to something different and something different, but nonetheless.
Yeah. And I think that was really that conversation, what was missing between the two of them.
Of course.
Because I think there was a lot of options. It was a fairly large company, very successful. And I just think that conversation didn't happen.
Yeah.
So that we didn't have formal experience, but between selling our own first business and then the personal experiences we came from our family background, it kind of made sense in this weird way of spider webs that all came together.
Yeah.
So, and then as the entrepreneurial gene, we had a broker and they did an okay job.
Okay job.
Okay
So
job.
you're inspired to actually like, hey, I think I could put my own spin on this.
Yes.
So you get into that business and like, what were some? Can you rewind to 2013 for a little bit? Like, what were some of the nuances that you had to like navigate? Like, was that interesting for you?
It was interesting. So first we went into it and we're like, well, we'll be brokers for a few years and we'll find our next thing. We'll get like access to the market before.
Oh yeah. It's kind of what me and my dad were like, because he was selling some businesses on his own, not in a franchise.
Yeah.
But he would look at the businesses. My dad actually invested in a minority stake in a couple of businesses that they had come to him to help sell or grow.
Yeah.
He said, I actually kind of like this business. Like, what in lieu of my fees, what if I took like a couple points equity or something like that? But anyways.
So that was our goal in it. And once we got in it, we're like, this is actually a really good business and it's well suited for us. It's really good for people who have ADHD because we work on a new set of businesses every year.
Yeah.
But some of the nuances, like first, it is a business where you have a lot of risk. You get paid on the back end. So you do all your work up front for little to no money, right? And you're putting all your eggs in the basket with the seller. Right. So there was a lot of things that we had to learn about cash flow management as owners.
Yeah,
that was
sure.
Big learning curves for the first few years.
Especially in kind of like, well, I guess we're kind of jumping around, but I just think it's fascinating to me too. The franchise model had to give you some support, right? Versus like my dad, who kind of literally had nothing, right? It was everything. At least you have like a framework. Was that helpful for you?
It was so helpful. And I don't think franchises are right for everyone, but I do think when you're looking to either get into business for the first time yourself or you're looking to scale fast, it can be really helpful. Like it probably would have taken us 10 years to get where we got to in year 3. That we got to in year 3.
Without that framework.
Without that framework. Yeah.
With a national brand and all that kind of stuff
exactly.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I always say so. It's almost like going through like an MBA program if you bought a franchise, right? Because you have this framework, but you could. So did you struggle? Like one of the notes I wrote down early because I knew this franchise thing was going to come up is back to the corporate world where the one struggle I have for this franchise, and it might just be because I don't know what I don't know, is that you still have the framework. So it's like your own. But it's kind of not your own, right? Or maybe it's not. Can you kind of just talk about that? Maybe educate me a little bit, because that would be my one thing where I think it would be good to have the framework to get started, and then my wild mind, like the horse racing track and stuff like that, right? Like you do have to operate within a frame.
You do, but there's variations of how strict that framework is.
Okay.
So when I explain this to people thinking about it, I always use the two extremes of McDonald's and Transworld's like on the opposite end. So McDonald's as an owner, like you're literally taught when you have to put the tomato on the bun and how much. Do you know that every McDonald's burger has the same amount of ketchup on it?
I did not. No,
yes.
I did not.
So every McDonald's burger has the same amount of ketchup on it. So like you don't have any, and that's a metaphor for like you have no flexibility in that business environment. Right now you've probably noticed they're going to a lot of the automated kiosks and reducing their staff.
Yeah.
You're doing that as an owner. There's no leeway, right? They're all
so
doing
like
it as
if I didn't want to do that, you're just you have to move in that direction. 'Cause that's where we're all going.
That's where we're all going.
Okay, fair.
So that's the one end of franchising, right?
Okay, yeah.
And you
Sure.
can be very successful in that. I know a lot of McDonald's owners who are very successful. They're very process-oriented people. The other end of the spectrum is like our brand I use as an example with Transworld and a lot of the other brands that our parent company owns, United Franchise Group, allows some creative flexibility as an entrepreneur. So you have a collective brand.
Yeah.
So I can't change the brand colors.
Right, yeah.
I can't change what we do for a living. I can't be like, oh, hey, we're going to sell wine under Transworld now, right?
Right.
Things like that. But outside of that, we have a lot of flexibility in how we deliver our services, how we manage our company, how we hire our team. So it gives you some of the support on the stuff I don't want to do. Like,
Right.
I don't love developing technology or figuring out what technology systems, like I don't love figuring out how we're going to insure the whole company. Like there's stuff that we do collectively that I'm like, oh, thank God that we're doing that collectively. But it still lets me flex my entrepreneurial creativity.
So yeah, I guess it depends on if you were advising a potential franchisee, kind of what do you want, right? Do you want to move in the McDonald's way where if we're going to change to kiosk, like you have to roll like that, or flexibility? I think Transworld's probably got it right though, because they would attract more people like you if they can flex a little bit, because you could still put your creative swing on things, if you will, which I think is pretty cool.
The industry dictates it a lot too. Like food is obviously very process oriented and things like that. But I think it comes down to like any organization is culture, right? Yeah. And so if you're going to go into a franchise model, you have to make sure the culture aligns with your personal values and culture and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. So I got to take a quick break, but when we get in, so I want to dive down this 10-year run because, again, number one, 6 years running, that, again, was by design. So I want to learn a little bit about how you've done that because I think our listeners would love to learn. So let's take a quick break. We'll be back just in a couple minutes.
The Exit Planning Institute is the authority in exit planning. With its award-winning process, the Value Acceleration Methodology provides deep insights into how to help business owners create more significant companies while blending and aligning their business, personal, and financial goals. EPI brings together the world's most elite exit planning advisors to form the EPI community. The EPI community represents over 15,000 professional advisors worldwide, including its 5,000 certified exit planning advisors. These advisors include financial advisors, growth consultants, CPAs, attorneys, M&A advisors, amongst others, who come together to expand their knowledge, create and innovate, network and relationship build, grow their practices, and better attract and engage business owner clients. Join EPI today and gain access to the community, content, courses, credential, and conference that you as the professional advisor need in order to harness the opportunity with small to lower middle market business owners who strive to grow a company of significance, thus having a highly valuable and transferable company. Follow the Exit Planning Institute on LinkedIn and visit earnsepa.com to learn more about the community leading the exit planning profession.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast. So we were diving into the Transworld story here with Jessica, and she's been on quite a run. So I want to learn from her here because she's clearly doing something right. So you go from, in 10 years, it's a pretty fast trajectory. You've gone from one office to now 3, right? So you have Vegas, Dallas, Fort Worth, and then all of Colorado?
All of Colorado, and and we just added Waco and Austin in Texas.
And Waco and Austin, I just saw that. So... And all of that in 10 years. So what's the secret to success? Like, what are some for fellow entrepreneurs out there thinking about doing something? What are some key things for you?
I think one is the drive and motivation.
Yeah.
My husband and I are both very competitive people. So I remember specifically we're sitting at the Transworld conference in 2015. We were celebrating the 2014 awards. And the number one award is the MVP award. And we're sitting there and he looks at me and he goes, "This is the last time we're not going to win that award."
Yeah, you and your husband are, definitely.
So there's like that competitive nature. And I tell people all the time, like, bigger's not always better. Like, you can be really successful in lots of businesses, ours included, with a small team and a small company. But for us, like, that competitive nature has really been helpful.
Yeah.
And it's helped us build a culture that's competitive, still collaborative, but competitive.
Yeah, so you would probably attract your brokers and stuff are all similar, right? All pretty competitive people.
Yeah, pretty competitive.
Yeah.
I also think one of our core values is learn and grow. And that's been really big for us, is like we've continued, and we were talking about this at dinner a little bit, like you have to reinvent your organization at different levels. Like when it was me, Al, and our dog Sailor, like it's a very different business than we're running today, right?
Oh yeah.
But there was 3 or 4 iterations of the business between then and now. So you have to, as a business owner, just educate yourself of what does your organization need at these different levels, and then be willing to take the risk to take that step up.
I think that's such a great lesson, and it takes me back to 2020 in our own business at EPI, is that I don't want to say we got comfortable, but I think there was a little bit of that. So if you got to think, in 2019, we were doing 9 SEPA programs a year, right? Basically 1 a month and taking the end of the year off, or maybe 1 summer month and then December. Why I was thinking about this is that when I think about, so one of our core values is purposeful growth. So whether that's personal growth, professional growth, you always have to be learning and evolving. And in 2019, a couple things happened. Number one, we were like, dude, we're kind of at our max. I was traveling 225 days a year. So talk about scale, like that's not scalable.
Yeah.
We're flying our faculty around everywhere. And there's the need, there was like we could grow, but we're like, dude, how the hell are we going to do this? But there's also like a comfortability, like we're getting 100 people a SEPA program, 9 SEPA programs, like we're feeling pretty good. This model's working. And then boom, pandemic. And as you can imagine, I have 303 people signed up for a SEPA program with no delivery mechanism, right? It was like, I always say it's like having a bolt, like I manufacture the bolt and a bunch of people have bought the bolt, but there's no boats, trains, trucks, cars, planes, nothing to get the bolt to the actual end user. So it challenged us to reinvent ourselves, and that's when we literally ripped the core values off the wall as well and put on new core values, and one of them was always to be innovative, always to be purposefully growing, and that's where we brought the innovation portion into the summit as well. Is that I think this industry, and I think in this day and age, innovation and growth I think is absolutely critical. But I would share that if somebody that asked me the same question, I would say that growth and innovation has got us to where we're always moving in a different direction or an evolved direction.
It's interesting too, because like sometimes the biggest challenges you face in business, if you look at it under the right lens, like you guys did, that provides your biggest growth opportunities and your biggest creativity and innovation. So it's just a shift of the lens of, yes, you have a challenge or something that could really take the business down, but if you shift the lens of the opportunity it presents, it really can push you to a completely different new level.
So I got to ask too, how's the relationship with Al as a business partner and husband, right? So I find it fascinating. We were talking about this as well earlier on in some of the pre-show stuff. So you said you've known Al since high school?
Yeah, we went to the same high school. We did not date in high school.
Okay.
But we went to the same high school.
Did you guys go to the same college?
No, we did not go to the same college.
Yeah. So what kind of re-engage after college?
After college, yes.
Then get into the wine business.
Yeah, well, so then I moved to, he was living in Colorado at the time, moved to Colorado. We worked together.
Oh, right, at that
company for like 8 months probably. And then the wine business.
Okay.
So, and we actually started the wine business. We're engaged, but we weren't married yet.
Yeah. So talk about secrets to success. What are those? So for any of the listeners out there that are running husband and wife teams, I mean, you guys got a lot going on.
Yeah, we do. I think, one, it starts with, everybody asks me, because I work with my husband. We talked about my one sister, my other sister works in the business. We have a lot of family in the business.
So do you consider your business a family business?
I think so.
Yeah, you think so? Okay.
And we've got a lot of team members that are family members in the business too. We have a couple of husband and wife teams. We have a couple of father and son teams.
So there is a sense of family.
There's a sense of family.
Interesting.
But I start with, you have trust with your partner, right? Sure, I mean, like I know that Al has the same goals as I do. Yeah. We're on the same trajectory in life. We're trying to accomplish the same thing. So if we know we have that baseline with trust and we're going to hold each other accountable, but also protect each other and where we're going in the future, I think it all starts there. And I think that's with any partnership, right?
Sure.
After that, we've always operated on what we call a divide and conquer basis. Okay. So anytime our businesses have flourished, it's when we've implemented this strategy. So when we first started the wine business, we're trying to both do everything, and we're both selling and both doing marketing and both doing business development, and it wasn't working. And so we sat down, we split the business in half. And Al took sales and I took everything else.
Okay.
And that's when the wine business grew. And so funny, we get into trans world. first year or two in business, we're trying to do everything. I'm selling businesses, he's selling businesses. We're both hiring, both training, and like it's not working. Okay. And so we're sitting down at dinner one night. We're like, we have to split the business again. Mm-hmm. And so we split it. Al took sales, I took everything else, and that's when that business grew. When
it was just you and Al, like out of the gate in 2013, were you doing the M&A work and he was doing the sales work? Were you actually working the deal?
We were both doing everything.
Oh, so you were both still doing
we were both
everything.
Doing everything, yeah. And then in 2015, when we decided we were never going to not win the award again.
Yeah, right. It's a milestone moment for you.
It is.
Though,
and like
really.
I remember it. There's some times in your life where like some of my memories as I get older, I'm like, I don't really remember that part. But I remember that we were sitting in Vegas at a conference. I remember exactly what I was wearing and I didn't know what he was wearing, but it's just like a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
But that was our main takeaway when we came back from the conference was to split the business again, like we did in the wine business.
The wine thing. Right.
And that's what made it take off. So when we split the business, it also means like I trust him, give him full autonomy and control to run his side of the business, right? Yeah. I'm not going to micromanage. He's not going to micromanage. Yes, there's questions and we want to understand how both pieces are coming together. But it's really running it like separate divisions. So day to day, like you asked me, do we work a lot? I don't see Al most days.
Yeah, right.
You know, there'll be days when we both hop in Zoom calls and we'll be in, different areas of the metro or even different states.
Right.
So it's not like at this point we're working side by side.
Right. Do you guys have physical office, like in your, what's your biggest office, Colorado?
Colorado,
So do you have physical office space that you guys go into and stuff?
Yeah.
Do you guys drive in together?
No, we don't.
No, so you guys don't even drive in?
We used to. But now we have a 2-year-old and we have 2 9-month-old puppies too. So drop off.
See, there's another. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So talk about a lot going on, man.
So there's a drop off schedule now. So we don't drive. But yes, we have a physical building that we own in Colorado, Dallas, and then in Vegas we have one too. But
I think it's actually would be talking about virtual world. Like I think it would be a little bit hard in your space to have like a virtual presence, right? I think owners want to probably, do you have people come into your office, right? Like
that's still, and that's what we recommend for owners.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we're having lengthy meetings. We're talking about confidential things with the owners and figuring out what deal structure could happen or what their next stage is or interviewing buyers. And we can't do that on a Zoom call. We can't do that at the owner's place of business.
Well, there's got to be a relationship that's built too, so you can't really do that necessarily all on Zoom. I think there's a capacity that you or there's a sense that you can a little bit there, but that in-person thing I think really makes a lot of sense in your space. Yeah. So totally, just a random question. How do you feel about owners being very hush about the sale of their business or about their exit, right? I always laugh. My dad tells a story at SEPA. He goes, I was in this guy's office, and the guy was like 75 years old, and he said, hey, Chris, you're talking a little too loud in my conference room. You're here for growth. We're not going to talk about exit and selling. And he was like, dude, you're 75 years old. Like, I think people know you're getting ready to do something. And it was an aha moment for that gentleman too, because it was actually a respectful comment, because he had really great people, he had a really great product, and his customers loved not just him, but they loved the product. Yeah. So I think they were all wondering, like, we love working here, man, but we know that you're 75, so we'd like to stick around. So we would just like to know what the plans are. So what are you advising owners? What's your opinion on that? Is it something we talk about? Is it something we talk to our employees about? Or do you try to, is there a sense of confidentiality still?
We try and keep it confidential. Yeah. So I find in most organizations that we work in, and so in the market we work in the micro or Main Street market, sure, and then up to the lower middle market. So not that the employees at those companies are less sophisticated. It's sometimes they're not thinking that strategic succession.
Longer term.
Longer term. And I tell the owners, I don't believe it's fair, especially if you're going on to a third-party market sale. If you're going to do a management buyout or an internal transition, it's a totally different conversation. But if you're going to a third-party sale, it's a really trying time. And when you're in certain market conditions like we are now, like you go under contract 2, 3, 4 times and the deal fails. Yeah. And it's this roller coaster ride that's really stressful for the owners. And I believe that's our burden as owners. Yeah. And we don't need to drag our team through it. Sure. As humans, humans don't like change and uncertainty. So
that is true.
There is times where we'll say, okay, it's important to bring the team in, or at this point it's important to bring the team in. But in most cases, we say don't. It's just not the right time. It's not fair to them.
Fair.
And it can jeopardize the organization. We had a deal last year. The owner was under contract for $3.5 million. Wanted to tell, good deal. Yeah. Wanted to tell her team, and we just by getting to know the team, and she was not 75. She was younger. Yeah. And we're like, we just don't think it's the right move at this point. She told her team. They decided they didn't like the buyer and left, and they took all the clients with them. So she sold.
So now she got nothing.
She sold a year later for $250,000.
Oh my God!
So that's an extreme.
Yeah,
case.
That's an extreme case, but still, it's a good example of what could happen.
Yes.
Wow.
So you're taking
especially in that micro market. I think that's a good perspective too.
You're taking a really big risk, and you have to know the risk you're taking if you're involving your team, and you have to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many brokers do you have now? And I guess, do you have a home office too? So you have a leadership team and all that, plus all your brokers out in the field, right?
Yeah.
So how many between all three offices?
Between all three offices, we have 65 total people on our team. Most of them are brokers, so 57 brokers. The rest are our support team.
Okay.
So, and they're spread over 3 states, things like that. Yeah.
So then so you've obviously worked a lot with M&A folks. What makes a good broker?
So I think first it starts with understanding a business owner. Yep. And we were just talking about this, a lot of our brokers are past business owners and have owned their own businesses in the past. I think, some of them were longer term business owners, but almost every one of them has owned a business at some point in their life. So I think it starts with that understanding, compassion, and empathy of what you go through day to day as a business owner. So that's first and foremost. And then secondly, one of the core beliefs I have about what we do is it's not okay to just list a business for sale and wait for the buyers to come. Our job is to sell the business, right? So we have to be proactive in selling the business. So we look for people with great sales skills, great business development skills, great relationship skills. Yeah. So
no, that's good. I think that you hear in the broker world a lot, it's all about the volume, right? So you just throw a bunch of listings out there, and you know that you're going to sell 2 or 3 of them, right? Mm-hmm. And then to your point, I don't know if that's all that fair to the other owners that might have an okay or good business, but they're not one of the great ones. But at least there's you might hit. So I think that's a good perspective for a lot of owners that are listening to know that they're serious about helping you go out and sell that business.
Yeah.
So now we're going to fast forward again to 2019. Really, it was December 2019, early 2020. Mm-hmm. You roll out and say, okay, when we're thinking about for the CEPAs listening, right? We're discover, prepare, and decide. Decide is really in the M&A world over on the far right. You say, look, I want to go all the way to the left and start and discover, and I'm going to open up a company called Exit Factor. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So jumping back to your point about a lot of brokers list businesses for sale. And a lot of them don't get sold. And you guys, you could have done research on this, but 8 out of 10 businesses that are listed don't sell.
Right, exactly.
And the part I struggled with as a broker is that when I was personally brokering deals, is what would keep me up at night.
Yeah.
Especially in this micro market. I joke all the time that you're not going to change someone's life between a $30 million sale and $50 million sale. $30 million is still a good day, right?
Yeah, $30 million is a great day.
Yeah, but the difference between selling someone's $500,000 business or them going out of business is life-changing.
It's life-changing.
And that really bothered me. So I started doing a lot of research and education around why aren't these companies selling? We started interviewing buyers, and we did a bunch of buyer surveys of this is why we're not buying these companies. This is why we're buying these companies. This is why we're willing to pay more. And I found it's not a secret formula, but it is a formula of what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And so we started testing it with some of our clients and just said, hey, let's just try and put some of these practices in place in your business, and let's see if we get a better return for you. Right. And that was successful. And that's when I said, I think we can make a bigger impact on more people if we get them to prepare.
Yeah, prepare, right. Yeah, and add value. We were just talking about this. I was on an M&A webinar just the other day talking about how M&A advisors can participate on that front end, right? And that's why my dad ended up adding that consultative and exit planning, although I think it was more natural, right? He's always kind of been a value growth or a change agent kind of guy. Mm-hmm. He, after becoming CEPA in 2008, he learned that holistic approach that we teach and then added that, and it made it, you could tell he kind of took a deep breath. Yeah. Because it wasn't this crazy M&A world where in a 1 or 2 man shop, right? You're marketing your business, you're doing business development. Then you have some 2 or 3 good companies you can sell. Then you're working those companies; they all sell.
Yep.
You get a good payday, but then you got to re-up, in a smaller company. So he said, "Man, that's talk about risky, right?" We were talking about that at breakfast. Yeah. It is kind of a risky world. So he added in that consultative arm. So not only did he get kind of more steady cash flow, let's say, but he also got better deals on the back end. So owners that had the right mindset, right?
Yeah.
They thought from a buyer's perspective, like they already knew, okay, look, I do have an ugly baby. Let's clean it up here. And let's go from $500,000 of value to $1 million of value if I just take another couple, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So what's the vision for that? Where's that heading for you, Exit Factor?
Yeah, so we recently franchised Exit Factor.
Of course you did.
Yes.
Yeah, of course you did.
So I sold half of the company to United Franchise Group, which is the parent company of Transworld.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, and we just entered the franchising space, so we're selling franchises. I think that's the best way we can get the program and get the consulting services into the hands of owners. It's the easiest way to scale and affect the most amount of people.
Yeah. So what's the profile there too? So what I was thinking when she was kind of telling me about the vision for Exit Factor is for if you're a certified exit planning advisor out there looking, and I mean, you could tell me if this is right or wrong, but there's a lot of, on the consulting side, about 20% of the certified exit planning advisor community is a value growth consultant. And there's not a lot of national players.
Yeah.
So, right, you're basically, boom, now you're a national player.
Right.
But kind of like the framework that we were talking about, right? It's like I come back, I'm a SEPA, I have a value growth company, I want national brand, I want tools, I want process, I want marketing and branding. I think that would be ideal for me looking at an Exit Factor franchise, right?
I think so too. And really, as for ideal franchisees we're looking for is, again, we start with that baseline empathy, compassion, understanding of a business owner, right?
Okay. Yep.
And then 2, someone who has the experience and desire to coach, consult business owners through the value growth process.
Yeah.
That's really who we're looking for as an ideal franchisee.
Yeah.
So,
So the last 3 years have been actually pretty big. I want to talk about the book. I want to talk about you becoming a mother. That's cool. And I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to see at the summit. So I'm going to get there next. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
For business owners, by a business owner. Walking to Destiny is your essential resource for understanding what makes your business highly profitable and significant. It becomes a business owner's handbook to know how to rapidly grow value and ultimately unlock the personal wealth trapped in business. Exit Planning Institute CEO Christopher Snider demonstrates how strategic exit planning will help you achieve improvements today while positioning you to build wealth for generations. Secure your success along other value creators. Discover, prepare, and decide what your walk to destiny will ultimately be. If executed correctly, these strategies can grow a business owner's wealth by 10 times. Walking to Destiny, the second edition, the 11 actions an owner must take to rapidly grow value and unlock wealth. Get your copy today at www.walkingtodestiny.com.
Hey guys, welcome back to Exit Is Now. So we have gone from wine companies to Transworld to now Exit Factor. And so now I want to go into you as a mother and you as an author. So 2021, you released your book?
I wrote it in 2021, released it in April of 2022.
So this is new for you, right?
Yep, that's
so
new.
How was that experience?
It was really good. It was one of those bucket list things. I always
Really?
wanted to write a book. I was a good student, and I was always writing like little books and poems and stuff in school. So I always thought I'd write some type of like fiction book.
Oh.
But as I got into my career, I'm like, no, I think nonfiction's the way to go.
Yeah.
And so when I had written this Exit Factor program, my husband said, like, I think this would be really good if you could distill it down into a book. Like, this is your first book, right? So that's what I did. I met my co-author, Anne Mary, and gave her the framework of the Exit Factor program. And then we started doing Zoom calls together, and the book came to form over that course of 2021.
So did you have who's your publisher and all that? Obviously, this has always fascinated me because now we've released 2. I mean, Walking to Destiny 1 and then Walking to Destiny 2.
Yeah.
And it was actually, so we just released that back in May at the Exit Planning Summit. And I think that was actually harder for Dad to do the second round. He went from 60,000 words to 95,000 words. And I was like, dude, you got to knock that back down.
Yeah.
But it is a hell of a process. I think it's interesting because you did it with support of a co-author.
Yeah.
Where Dad's literally sitting in Florida for a month, just like just flowing in his little, oceanfront condo.
Yeah.
So where did you write? Like what?
I didn't write.
Yeah, right? So
Yeah.
you would talk to her.
I would talk to her. So I can write. I'm a great
sure.
writer, but I don't have time to do a lot of it.
Yeah.
So I gave her the framework of, like I said, to build out the table of contents, and then we would just talk on Zoom calls once a week.
Yeah,
so
see.
I would give her some additional context on each of the topics, and then I would tell her stories,
Yep.
right? So a lot of the book is stories about different companies we worked with and stuff. And I just hop on the phone with Anne Mary and she'd be like, hey, tell me about a deal when this happened. And we would just talk.
Jive, yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And it worked really well.
So you saw her some. There's a lot of people that are, I would say, are pretty big time thought leaders, and they don't have a book yet. So they're always talking about like, how do you guys do that? But so I don't think there's like a one way fits all, right? So it's to your point. I always thought, so I have this little ebook called Fishing for Value that was written by a ghostwriter.
Yep.
And we did the same thing where I would just really it was like, for me, it was like bullet points of thoughts. She digests that. Then we get on a call. This is before Zoom, right? So we'd literally just get on a call.
Yeah.
And we would just chat it out. And she came, it was actually pretty incredible because I was like, I don't know, that's like almost like magic. Like you just literally took some bullet points and some wild conversations with me and wrote this. Now, Fishing for Value was a fictional story about how an owner went through an exit. So it was kind of a fun one to write versus a more of a practical kind of how-to as well. But I like the ghostwriter. I think if I were to do a book, my book someday will probably be like growing up through value acceleration.
Ooh,
right?
I like that.
So, and talk about how we've implemented what we all know as SEPAs into our practices or into our businesses. So you do Exit Factor, you write the book,
Yep.
and have a son turning 2.
Yeah.
So how do you balance all of that?
Oh, that's what I'm still learning.
Yeah, right? I would assume so. It's pretty incredible.
I mean, we do like with a lot of help, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a really big team now. Part of the reason I sold Exit Factor to our parent company, United Franchise Group, was for the help, right? They have a team of 200 plus back-end employees that help run the show. And then nannies, grandparents, all kinds of things that, really help with our son. But what I'm learning now too is like, just really focused time.
Yeah.
That I joked earlier, like I think every entrepreneur has a little bit of ADHD,
Yeah,
but
sure.
I have to really control it now. Like when I'm with my son, like I have to be with
like
my
put
son.
the phone away.
Exactly,
and, like,
right?
Yeah.
And when I'm at work, I have to be at work and focused on work, which is actually why I'm returning to the office more often than not and not being at home because I get distracted with things. But that focus time is really important now because I don't know what I did with my time before I had a child. I don't know what I did, but I was able to be a little bit more chaotic and free flowing and things. And it's got to be really structured and disciplined now.
That's something we talk a lot about here too. So we don't have a lot of we have a fairly young team here at EPI. So there's only a handful of us that have kids, but we do talk about that. This big thing for me, I had this aha moment at the beginning of the year. If our audience can remember Justin Goodbread coming on the show, it was one of our first episodes. And I always talked about this work-life balance. It's also one of our core values. But he said, Scott, there's no such thing as balance. It's blend.
Yeah.
Right? And perhaps it could be seasonal. We just had another gentleman on the show, too, Casey Clark, who then challenged that even further. He said, Scott, I only work 45 hours a week. Can you imagine that? How much do you work? You work more than 45 hours.
I mean, like I don't even count because what's work and what's not work, right?
Well, yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
so he's like, so he framed it even deeper, and he said, I think it actually can be more balanced because what I thought about, if Casey's listening, I don't know if I could do that, but what he did challenge me with is that it allowed you to delegate and elevate. If you only have 45 hours as the owner, as the president of the company, it really forced you to say, should I be taking that on, or is that more of a Paige thing, or a Jesse thing, or a Chase thing, or a Jocelyn thing, or a Josh for me, my leadership team? Or maybe it's a member thing, and they should be working with the qualified member experience representative. So it's been this whole work-life blend and being present has been something that we've talked a lot about throughout the year here at EPI.
Well, and I got challenged recently too. We were talking, I was fortunate enough to go spend a week with Richard Branson on Niagara Island, right?
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. And he's at a point in his career, he's got multiple billion-dollar companies, but he's still involved in them.
Yeah.
And he only works 2 hours a day. Right. And he's been doing this for a lot of years. So he spends first 3 hours a day on his body, works about 2 hours a day, and then he spend some more time doing family things and stuff like that. And that's been his schedule and lifestyle for a while. And it's challenged me to think if he's able to do that and run these multi-billion dollar organizations, why can't we figure it out?
Can we do it? I do think it's a challenge. And back, I guess it was 2022, we had Gino Wickman, the guy that founded EOS, right?
Yep.
And he said, and he did this when he was young, when he had just first started at EOS too, I take the month of August off. So 30 something days, I'm not returning emails, I'm not doing that. So again, challenge you in his system, right? Delegate and elevate. And he's got an executive assistant that actually returns his emails for him.
Yeah.
So they have to understand his voice and all that stuff. But I always thought that was cool. I was inspired when I saw him speak last year, and I was like, I'm going to do that in 2023. I didn't do it. I split the 30 days basically into two-week periods. So I took one in the spring and then one at the basically end of the summer, right before Labor Day, and it was good.
Yeah.
But we've done I think a nice job of decentralizing Dad in the business. Now it's time to decentralize me as well. But nonetheless, I thought that again, being present, I think is a key thing for the listeners to hear, because I think that makes the difference, right?
Yeah.
If you're there, but you're concentrated on the next deal or the next growth activity, your son's going to know. He's going to feel it, right?
Yeah. My business partner, Ray Titus, tells me all the time, he's like, do you know how children and families spell love? And I said, no. And he says they spell it Time, time.
Yeah, right.
And it's not about quantity of time. It's about the quality of time. So
that's such a good lesson too. Thank you for that.
You're
because
welcome.
I struggle with it too, because it's like I was telling you, even this week, we've been all over the place. I was in 4 cities in 5 days. Then we came back and we've had a bunch of folks through the office, hanging out on podcasts, doing some other stuff. Then I leave for an owners forum and all kinds of other stuff. So this October, November has been, but quality is key.
Yeah.
So I want to wind down the show with introducing a little bit of your power session. So the day after, and for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, at the Exit Planning Summit each year, I would say go check it out, exitplanningsummit.com. You can read more about Jessica there and all of that as well. But we do basically like a TED Talk, right? It's 15 to 18 minutes. There's typically no presentation behind you, right? It's the room is dark. The light is right on you. I always say it's kind of like a poetry slam, right?
Yeah.
So you chose to theme or your session around what you're calling the day after. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think people don't talk enough about is once a business owner exits, a lot of people, and I think you guys have seen this in your readiness surveys, a lot of people are upset with the decision, not because of money, not because of the deal structure, but because of a lack of purpose and identity
100%.
the day after. And so I think it's a really important theme. I think from a business perspective, it does help frame why some of our clients as advisors may be hesitant to move forward. But it also allows us to understand where they're coming from and give some more empathy and support to that. So I'm going to share about that, but I'm also passionate about it because it did happen to me as well.
Yeah, happened to me too. 100%.
So, I mean, I was young, 29,
Yeah.
did not have any personal tie to the wine business, but the day after and the months after were really challenging. And my husband and I both faced depression afterwards.
Wow.
And it's after I haven't really talked about it a lot, except for the last 5 years. And now that I've been talking about it, everyone's like, yeah, me too.
Well, I think it plays well into the exit factor stuff too, right? Because that's all about preparation, right? And it's not just about business stuff, the personal stuff. When we do, 75% of owners profoundly regret selling their business just within the year after selling it. It's like that guy. I think I've probably told this story on the air before. One of our SEPAs came through as a financial advisor. He said, "Hey, I didn't get to do the SEPA stuff with him. He came in after he sold his company, and he's doing like a real struggle. Guy's got a ton of money." He's a really great guy, but he's like a little depressed. And they said, "Can you have a call with him?" So I said, "Sure." I called him at 9 a.m. on a Monday, and he said, "Scott, you're pretty it's like 9 a.m. on a Monday, man." I was like, "Yeah, we have a company-wide meeting at 10 a.m. It's like my favorite time of the whole week. We get all 30 or something of us together and off we're running." And he goes, "Oh, yeah, you want to know what I'm doing?" I'm like, "What are you doing, man?" He's like, "Well, I'm in my basement shooting pool, playing billiards." He's like, "In my boxer shorts." He's like, my phone ain't ringing. I'm 54. I'm divorced. My kids are grown and out of the house. It's all me. I have money, but I have nothing to do. So, yeah, the day after. So, well, thanks for hanging out. I really appreciate you coming all the way in. Yeah. And, feel free to get online, get the book. Feel free to look at her stuff over at the summit with her fellow power sessioners. I'm looking forward to it over at JW Marriott Marco 9. Didn't you get married there?
I did get married there.
So yeah, are you going to bring Al?
Yeah, I think I could bring
And
Al.
like celebrate? When's your anniversary?
November 14th. So
November 14th.
it'll be like a halfweigh.
like a half year.
Yeah.
So that'll be cool. Maybe we'll do something at the summit for you guys.
You don't have to do that.
No?
But yeah,
Too
I think
embarrassing?
we're bringing. We'll bring him. I'm bringing my son, and then my mom.
Oh, cool.
My mom like loves that place, so I have to bring her. So
That's awesome. See, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
So again, thanks for hanging out with us. And our next show is December 20th. So subscribe, listen, and leave a review on all of our podcast platforms. Thank you guys very much. We'll see you soon.